This week's homework video is all about percentage and ratio. These are two areas that are linked to the fractions homework we've done over the last 2 weeks. And this is the Getting Secure version of the video. Now, percentage is a system that was invented to try and make comparisons between different sets of data. If I'm trying to work out which basketball player is the best at scoring free throws, shots from the foul line, I can't just look at how many shots they scored. I also need to consider how many shots they've taken to work out who's the most likely one to score. Clearly, Henson's going to score more from his 600 shots than Dominguez is from his 25. But if I can work out how many shots each player will make if they were given 100 efforts, I've got a kind of standard way of comparing their performance. If Dominguez is making 17 from 25, I can assume that from 100 shots, 4 times as many, he'll make 68 of them, 68% out of 100. If Henson's making 312 out of 600, to work out how many he'd make out of 100 shots, I need to divide by 6, 52%. And in the same way, 780 from 1,000 would mean I'm making 78 for every 100. And now I've got a standard measure. I can see, well, Iverson makes the highest proportion, and then it's Dominguez, and then it would be Henson. Now, one season, basketball player DeAndre Jordan had a really difficult time from the free throw line. He made 120 free throws out of 300 shots. Can you work out what his shooting percentage was? What percentage of his shots went in? Well, of course, as a fraction, we know that he made 120 out of 300. But to find it as a percentage, I'll need to know how many he would have made given 100 shots. Here, I'm dividing the number of shots he's given by 3. So I'll also need to divide the number of shots that he made by 3. That means 40 out of 100 he would have made. For every 100 shots, he makes 40. And that, of course, means 40%. Now, to be able to find percentages of amounts, I need to link my understanding of fractions to my understanding of percentages. So, I know that a half is 50%, because 2 lots of 50 makes 100. Whereas a quarter is 25%, because 4 25s make 100. And of course, that I know that 10% is a tenth, and 10%, well, that makes 100. These facts are really important when we're trying to work out percentages of amounts. Let's have a look at how we could use this information. If I'm trying to work out 60% of 80, probably the first thing I'd do is work out what 50% is. Well, to find what 50% is, of course, I need to divide by 2, and that will be 40. Then I'll need to know what 10% is. Of course, I know how to work out 10%. I just need to divide my number, 80, by 10, and that will give me 8. So I'll know by adding those two up, 50% and 10%, I'll have 60%, which of course here is 48. Have a go at working out these percentages of amounts. Pause the video. For the first one, I'd know that 10% of 70 must be 7 by dividing by 10, so 20% must be double that, 2 10%, 14. Equally, I know that 10% of 60 must be 6, and so to find 5%, I must half it, because of course 5% is half of 10%. Half of 6, 3. And for the last one, if I'm going to find 15%, I'll need to find 10% and 5%. 10% is 8, 5% of course is half of it, is 4. So to find 15%, I'm going to need to add these two bits together, the 10% and the 5%. That will be 12. Now, this is a similar question, it's just presented in a different way. Here's a pattern on the grid. What percentage of this grid is shaded? Pause the video and have a go. Well, the first thing to do is to write it as a fraction. In total, the whole is 25. There are 25 squares, and 10 of those are shaded. Now, of course, as a percentage, I need it out of 100. How many lots are 25 and 100? Well, 4. So I'll need to do 25 times 4 to get 100. So equally, I'll have to times this 10 by 4, 4 lots of that, to get 40 out of 100, which of course means my answer is 40%. Now, ratios very closely linked to fractions. If we consider this made-up statistic, 2/5 of Real Madrid's goals are scored by Cristiano Ronaldo, then I'm saying 2 out of every 5 goals scored. So, for every 2 goals that Cristiano Ronaldo scores, 3 are scored by his teammates. Now, in this fraction, the emphasis is more on comparing Cristiano Ronaldo's goals to the total number of goals scored by the team, the total, which is 5. As a comparison, have a think about mixing paint. Every 3 units of yellow paint is needed for every 2 units of blue if I'm going to make the same colour of green. Here, the ratio, again, is 3 to 2. The total number of pots of paint for each mix, if you like, would be 5. But in this case, the thing that's more significant is the ratio of yellow to blue. The ratios, you can see, compares the parts, where the fraction considers the whole. Now, let's have a go at some ratio questions. So, for every 4 red sweets in the bag, there are 3 yellow sweets. I'm going to do the first question, and I want you to have a go at the next 2. So, I've laid the information out like this. For every 4 red, there's 3 yellow, and that's a total of 7 sweets. Now, if there's 16 red sweets, that's 4 lots of the original 4 lots of 4. So that means I must have 4 lots of 3 yellow ones, 12, and that will give me a total, then, of 28 sweets. The answer, of course, how many yellow sweets are there? 12. Lay the information out in the same way for your 2 questions. Pause the video, have a go, and then we'll look at the answers. So again, I've laid all the information out, red, yellow and total. So if there are a total of 21 sweets in the bag, that means there must be 3 lots of 7 sweets. So we must multiply all of these by 3. So that means that there must be 9 yellow and 12 red, the answer being 9. For the last example, if there are 15 yellow sweets, I need to work out, well, how many lots of 3 is that? So I've got 5 lots of this. So that means I need 5 lots of 4 sweets, 20, and that will mean I'll have a total of 35 sweets. How many are red? Well, 20. Make sure when you've completed your workings, you get your homework book signed, and we will be ready for you as ever when you get back to class.